Imagine this. You're lying awake at night, your mind racing with thoughts of someone or something you crave deeply. That desire pulls at you like a chain, promising pleasure, but leaving you restless, ashamed, or empty the next day. It steals your focus, weakens your resolve, and makes you feel out of control. You've tried to ignore it, distract yourself, or give in hoping it will fade, but it only grows stronger. This is the quiet frustration so many of us face with lust and unchecked desire. It's a battle as old as humanity itself. If this resonates with you, you're not alone, and there's a way out. The ancient Stoics faced the same temptations, yet they found lasting freedom through simple, timeless wisdom. If you're ready to take back control, hit that like button if this speaks to you, and subscribe for more Stoic guidance to build a stronger, calmer life. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Now, let's draw from the profound teachings of Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius to conquer lust and desire once and for all. Number 1. Understanding lust as a loss of inner control. Lust is not evil, but it is dangerous when it becomes the master. The Stoics taught that freedom begins with self-rule. When desire controls your actions, your attention, and your time, you're no longer living by reason. You are reacting. Epictetus warned that a man who cannot govern his impulses will always be governed by something outside himself. Lust pulls your mind into the future, into fantasies, into expectations that never fully deliver. Most people believe lust is about pleasure, but it is really about escape. It is the mind's attempt to run from boredom, stress, loneliness, or discomfort. Instead of sitting with unease, the mind reaches outward for stimulation. The Stoics observed that this habit weakens the soul over time. Every surrender trains the mind to avoid discipline and chase relief instead. Lust also fractures focus. When desire dominates, your thoughts scatter. Your goals feel distant. Your work loses intensity. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a scattered mind is a weakened mind. Desire pulls your attention away from the present moment, the only place where power exists. A man ruled by lust is rarely fully present in his own life. The danger is not one moment of desire, but repetition without resistance. Over time, the mind learns that effort can be avoided and discipline postponed. This creates inner disorder. The Stoics believed inner order is the foundation of strength. Without it, even intelligence and ambition collapse under pressure. To conquer lust, you must first see it clearly, not as pleasure, not as comfort, but as a force that demands payment. The price is clarity, energy, and self-respect. Awareness is the first act of control. Number 2, separating urge from action. One of the most powerful Stoic ideas is this: you are not your impulses. Desire arises naturally, but action is a choice. The Stoics made a sharp distinction between what appears in the mind and what the will decides. An urge is a visitor. It knocks. You decide whether to open the door. Most people collapse the gap between urge and action. The moment desire appears, they obey. But discipline lives in that small space between impulse and response. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that thoughts are just impressions, not commands. You do not have to act simply because something feels strong. When lust arises, the Stoics practice pause. Not suppression, not panic, pause. They observe the sensation without judgment. Where is it in the body? How long does it last? What thoughts accompany it? By observing desire instead of fighting it, its intensity weakens. What does examine loses power? Urges are temporary by nature. They rise, peak, and fall. Action gives them permanence. When you act, you reinforce the habit. When you wait, you starve it. This is why patience is a weapon. Every time you delay action, you reclaim authority over your own mind. This practice builds quiet confidence. You begin to trust yourself again. You realize that self-control is not about force. is about clarity. You are not denying life. You are choosing how to live it. Mastery begins when you stop identifying with the urge and start identifying with the one who observes it. Number 3, reframing pleasure through reason. The Stoics constantly asked one question: what is the true cost of this action? Lust promises pleasure, but reason demands honesty. Short pleasure often produces long weakness. The Stoic does not ask, will this feel good now, but what kind of man will this make me? Pleasure is not wrong, but chasing it blindly creates dependency. Seneca warned that a man addicted to pleasure becomes fragile. When comfort disappears, he collapses. When temptation appears, he surrenders. The Stoics sought resilience, not stimulation. Reframing desire means seeing pleasure as optional, not necessary. You do not need constant gratification to live well. In fact, excess pleasure dulls the senses. What once excited you becomes ordinary. This is how desire escalates and control erodes. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort to weaken attachment. Cold water, simple food, restraint. These were not punishments but training. They taught the mind that it does not need constant satisfaction to survive. This made desire lose its urgency. When lust arises, ask yourself, is this improving my character or weakening it? Character was everything to the Stoics. Pleasure that steals discipline is not a reward, it is a thief. True satisfaction comes from self-mastery. The calm that follows restraint lasts longer than the rush of indulgence. This is the pleasure the Stoics trusted. Number 4, transforming desire into purpose. Energy is never the enemy. Misuse is. Lust is energy without direction. The Stoics believe that when desire is disciplined, it becomes drive. What you resist with clarity can be redirected with intention. Instead of suppressing desire, the Stoics redirected attention toward purpose. Physical training, meaningful work, study, service, these grounded the mind in reality. A busy mind with purpose has little space for destructive indulgence. When desire arises, ask, what am I avoiding right now? Often lust appears when meaningful effort is delayed. Discipline fills the vacuum that desire exploits. Purpose is the strongest antidote to excess. The Stoics lived with daily intention. They knew what they stood for. When you know your values, desire loses its authority. You stop asking what feels good and start asking what aligns with your path. Over time, this redirection builds momentum. Energy once wasted becomes strength. Focus returns. Confidence grows, not from indulgence, but from consistency. A man with direction is harder to tempt because he knows what he is protecting. Number 5, building a daily practice of self-mastery. Conquering lust is not a one-time victory. It is a daily practice. The Stoics believed greatness is built in small, repeated choices. Each day is training. Each decision shapes the mind. Begin with awareness. Notice patterns without shame. Shame weakens discipline. Clarity strengthens it. When you fail, observe calmly and correct quietly. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind improves by returning to reason, not by self-punishment. Create structure. Wake times, movement, work, reflection. Structure limits the chaos where desire thrives. A disciplined day reduces mental noise. Lust grows in disorder. It shrinks in routine. End each day with reflection. Ask, where did I act with strength? Where did I surrender? This is not judgment, it is training. The Stoics believed reflection was the gym of the soul. Over time, desire loses its grip. Not because it disappears, but because you grow stronger than it. You become someone who can feel urges without being ruled by them. This is Stoic freedom, not the absence of desire, but mastery over it. Number 6, accepting that desire never disappears, and why that is good. The Stoics never promised the removal of desire. They promised mastery. Desire is part of being alive, and trying to erase it only creates frustration. What you resist blindly often returns stronger. The Stoics understood that peace does not come from eliminating impulses, but from standing above them. A man who expects desire to vanish is always disappointed. A man who expects it and prepares is never surprised. When you accept that desire will arise again and again, you stop panicking when it does. Panic weakens judgment. Acceptance restores calm. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that nature repeats patterns, and that nothing new or shocking is happening when temptation appears. It is simply the mind reacting to stimuli. Seeing desire as natural removes its power to shake you. This acceptance also prevents relapse through disappointment. Many people fail because they believe one victory means permanent freedom. Then when desire returns, they feel broken and give up completely. The Stoics rejected this thinking. Progress is not linear. Strength is built through repetition, not perfection. Desire becomes a teacher when approached correctly. Each urge reveals whether the mind is still weak, tired, bored, or unfulfilled. Instead of seeing this as failure, the Stoic sees it as information. What part of your life lacks structure? What responsibility are you avoiding? Desire often points directly to the work you are delaying. Freedom is not silence in the mind. Freedom is calm presence in the noise. When you stop demanding that desire disappear, you gain the strength to live with it without surrendering to it. Number 7. Why modern stimulation makes lust harder to control. The Stoics lived in a world with far fewer temptations, yet they still warned about excess. Today, the mind is under constant assault. Endless images, endless novelty, endless stimulation. The brain was never designed to process this volume. Lust becomes harder to control not because you are weak, but because the environment is aggressive. The Stoics believe that the mind becomes what it consumes. If you constantly expose yourself to stimulation, your baseline expectation rises. Ordinary life feels dull. Silence feels uncomfortable. Discipline feels painful. This is not a moral failure. It is conditioning. To reclaim control, the Stoics would reduce unnecessary input, not as punishment, but as protection. What enters the eyes shapes the thoughts. What shapes the thoughts shapes behavior. Lust thrives in overstimulation and weakens in simplicity. Choosing what you consume is an act of self-respect. You cannot train the mind while flooding it with triggers. The Stoics valued selective attention. They believed attention was sacred because it determined the quality of one's inner life. When stimulation decreases, clarity increases. Desire loses urgency. You begin to feel grounded again. This is not regression, it is recovery. The Stoics would call this returning to nature. Number 8. The role of solitude in conquering desire. The Stoics valued solitude, not as isolation, but as training. Solitude reveals the true state of the mind. Without noise, without distraction, desire becomes visible. Many people fear solitude because it exposes unresolved urges and restlessness. Lust often survives because it is never examined in stillness. Distraction keeps it alive. The Stoics practiced being alone with their thoughts so they could observe the mind without escape. This was uncomfortable, but transformative. In solitude, desire either weakens or teaches. You learn how fleeting urges are when you do not feed them. You also learn how much strength comes from simply sitting with discomfort without reacting. This builds inner endurance. Solitude also restores self-connection. Lust often pulls attention outward, away from identity and values. In silence, you remember who you are becoming. Purpose becomes louder. Temptation becomes quieter. The Stoics believed a man should be able to sit alone without needing stimulation. This ability is power. It means your mind belongs to you again. Number 9. Using death awareness to destroy short-sighted desire. One of the most powerful Stoic practices was remembering death. Not morbidly, but honestly. They believed that remembering how short life is sharpens judgment. Lust thrives on forgetfulness, forgetting time, forgetting consequences, forgetting purpose. When you remember that your time is limited, cheap pleasure loses its appeal. You begin to ask harder questions. Is this how I want to spend my strength? Is this what I want my mind filled with? Would this matter if today were my last? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every indulgence is a trade. You trade time, energy, and focus for a moment of sensation. Death awareness makes that trade visible. Many pleasures cannot survive that level of honesty. This practice creates urgency, not anxiety, but clarity. You stop wasting energy on things that leave you empty. Desire shrinks when meaning grows. The Stoics used mortality to wake themselves up. Desire feeds on delay. Death awareness demands presence. And presence is power. Number 10. Becoming the kind of man lust cannot control. Ultimately, the Stoics did not focus on fighting desire. They focused on becoming stronger than it. Identity determines behavior. When you see yourself as disciplined, you act accordingly. When you see yourself as weak, you behave to confirm it. Every act of restraint reinforces a new self-image. You begin to trust yourself. Trust creates calm. Calm creates consistency. Over time, lust no longer feels like a battle. It feels irrelevant. The Stoics believed virtue was the highest good. Not pleasure, not approval, not comfort. When virtue becomes your standard, desire loses authority. You no longer ask what you want. You ask what is right. This transformation is gradual but permanent. You stop living reactively. You move deliberately. You choose your actions instead of being dragged by impulse. This is the Stoic victory. Not suppression, not denial, but quiet, unshakable self-mastery. Desire will always knock at the door of your mind. It is not a sign of weakness, nor a mark of failure. It is part of being human, part of the energy that drives life itself. The difference between a man who lives in chaos and one who lives in calm is not that the latter never feels desire. It is that he stands firm when it comes, observes it without surrender, and chooses his action with reason. Every moment you resist, every pause you take before acting, every choice to redirect energy toward purpose strengthens the mind and deepens freedom. Stoicism teaches that the power over oneself is the most precious power of all. When you reclaim this power, lust loses its grip, not because it vanishes, but because you grow larger than it. Your inner world becomes a fortress of clarity, discipline, and calm. True mastery is not measured in the absence of temptation, but in the presence of reason. It is built in daily practices, in reflection, in the small victories that go unnoticed by the world, but shape the soul. Energy once wasted on fleeting pleasures can be converted into strength, focus, and the pursuit of a meaningful life. You begin to see yourself not as a slave to impulses, but as the architect of your own character, the guardian of your own mind. And as this understanding deepens, freedom becomes tangible. You no longer chase satisfaction, you become satisfaction. The peace that follows restraint is richer, fuller, and more enduring than any temporary indulgence. This is the path the Stoics walked. This is the path you can walk to, one deliberate choice at a time.